Okay, kids. What we're going to do right now is we're going to talk about estimating mixed numbers and quotients. You will want to have your book open up to page 164 to 165, as well as your notebook to take some notes. Okay, hopefully you got everything all ready and you're all set, ready to go. I'm going to give you some pre-notes before we begin talking about the concepts. Okay, first thing I want to emphasize is that estimation is all about compatible numbers. All right, and that's what you want to remember. We've been working with compatible numbers, and they'll be very important for this lesson. The other thing you want to remember is to look to the fraction part of the mixed number for clues how to round, okay? And we'll give you a couple examples down here of what we're talking about for this concept. Take the mixed number 15 3/4. Well, if you look at the fractional part of this, 3/4 is greater than a half. So in this case, it tells you that if you're going to round 15, it's probably better to round it up to 16. All right? If you look at the next example, they give you 29 1/8. Well, 1/8 is definitely less than a half, which means if you're going to do any rounding with 29, you're probably going to want to leave it the same or round it down to a number that is compatible with your other numbers. Okay? So the next example is 63 7/9, and again 7/9. 7/9 is greater than a half, so therefore you'd probably want to round that up to 64, or you could even take it to 65 depending on the compatibility with other numbers in your problem. So let's take a look at what the book discusses with us, okay? Estimating mixed number quotients. How can you estimate the quotient of a mixed number? All right, of mixed numbers. And then it gives us a situation. Lillian and her friends can hike an average of 3 5/8 miles per hour. About how many hours will it take them to hike 15 5/6 miles of the trail? Estimate the quotient, 15 5/6 divided by 3 5/8 to find out. Well, first of all, they then ask, we want to ask ourselves, what exactly is a quotient? And a quotient is the answer you get when dividing two numbers. In this case, we have these two mixed numbers. And then why is it reasonable to estimate the quotient in this situation? Why is this a situation where you'd estimate? Well, the answer to that is this. While the exact length of the trail section is known, the actual average miles hiked per hour could change due to a variety of factors such as the weather, the trail difficulty, even how tired they are. Okay? So that's why an estimation would be reasonable in this situation. Now, the book then goes on to give you one way of doing it. And it says to round to the nearest whole number by comparing the fractions to 1/2. So in this case, we're going to do some rounding based on the fractions. Well, you can see that 15 will round up to 16, and that's because 5/6 is greater than a half, so it would reason to make that 16. And then we have 5/8, and 5/8 is definitely greater than 1/2, so we would round that up to 4. And then we can simply do 16 divided by 4 and get our answer of approximately 4. So both 5/6 and 5/8 are greater than 1/2, so round up to the nearest whole number. And then our answer would be, it will take Lillian and her friends about 4 hours to finish their hike. Alrighty? Now, a good question you might be asking yourself is, why are both of the mixed numbers rounded up? Okay, well, they're rounded up because the fractions in both mixed numbers are 1/2 or greater, so you increase the whole number by 1. And that goes back to what we discussed at the beginning of the video. All right? So anyways, let's take a look at another way of possibly estimating this answer. And in this case, they use compatible numbers. All right? And 15 and 5/6 and 3 and 5/8 are close. 15 and 5/6 and 3 and 5/8 are close to the compatible numbers of 16 and 4. So that just happens to fit with our rounding up. So those numbers are compatible based on the whole numbers in the problem. So again, our estimate is reasonable. It will take approximately 4 hours. Now, question might be, why are 16 and 4 compatible numbers in the first place? Well, they are the dividend and divisor of a basic division fact, okay? They're compatible because, well, 16 is a multiple of 4. 4 is a factor of 16. That makes them compatible, okay? They're also even numbers divisible by 2 and 4, all right? So that's why they're compatible numbers. Here's what I'd like you to do now. I would like you to pause the video and try to complete each of these 4 problems, okay? And you're going to do the best you can, and if you do well, then you could probably stop the video at this point and do your practice problems. If you don't do so well, then we can continue the video. But right now, I'd like you to pause the video and see if you can come up with the answer for each of these problems. Show your work on paper, so if your questions, you can show your teacher. Pause the video now and do those problems. All right, let's take a look and see how you did, okay? I'm going to give you the answer to each of these problems right now, okay? The answer to number 1 is 5. Okay, the answer to number 2 is also 5. The answer to number 3 is 3. And the answer to number 4 is 3. Now, if you didn't get an estimate that was close to this estimate or this estimate, you'll probably want to continue the video. If you did get your estimates correctly, you can take your work and show it to your teacher or submit your notes and move on to the practice page. If not, and you're still not clear how they got these answers, you can continue watching the video now. Okay, let's take a look at number 1. Number 1, we have 35 and 1/3 divided by 6 2/3, and our answer is 5. Our estimate is 5. Now, this is a reasonable answer because the real answer, if we did it actually without estimating, would be 5 3/10. Okay? Now, one way that you could have estimated this would have been to take and round 35 to 36 and leave 6, 6. Now, that's a nice estimation because your estimated answer would be somewhat reasonable, but if you know what the real answer is, then you'd say, well, geez, 3/10 is less than a half, is less than a half, so therefore, a reasonable answer would be 5. So that's what they came up with, and how did they come up with that? Well, what they did was, we took and we said, okay, we're going to round 35 down to 35, leave it the same, and then we're going to look for a number that is compatible with 35 based on 6 2/3. Well, 2/3 is greater than a half, so therefore we could justify taking 6 and rounding it up to 7, making it compatible with 35, and then if you divide, you end up with 5. And that's how you come up with a reasonable estimate of 5. All right? Let's take a look at number 2. All right, in number 2, we have 24 and 5/8 divided by 5 4/7. The estimated answer is 5. If we were to do the math without estimating, our full answer would be 4 and 131 312. Okay? So you can see where, it's like, wow, these fractions, you probably don't want to deal with that. So an estimation is pretty good here. Now, one way of doing it to get the 5 would be to take the 24 and round it to 25. 5/8, 5/8 is greater than a half, so you can round that up. 4/7, okay, 4/7 is close to the halfway point, so you could leave that at 5, which is compatible to 25. 25 divided by 5 is 5, okay? Or you could have just said, you know what, I like turning this into a number that's compatible with that number. Another way of doing it, which may have given you a lower estimate, would be to take the 24 and leave it 24, and take the 5 4/7 and round 5 up to 6. So this is kind of like the opposite, but you can see where your estimate would be 4, where your estimate over here would be 5. All right? Let's take a look at number 3. In number 3, the estimated answer was 3. The exact answer would be 3 and 3 270seconds. So really, 3 is definitely the number you want. So one way that you could estimate it would be to say, okay, I'm going to look for compatible numbers. This is 7/9, so it is definitely close to 4. So if I start with 4 and then say, well, what's a compatible number that is close to 11 and is compatible to 4? Well, that would be 12. This could easily go up to a compatible number with this. This clearly wants to go up, be rounded to 4. And this right here, 3/8 is close to 4/8, so you could justify rounding that up to 12 and getting your division and your estimate of 3. Okay? Some people may have said, well, you know what? This is going to round to 12, and this is going to round to 3, but you can see where you have 12 divided by 3 is going to give you 4, and that probably is not your best estimate considering the actual answer there. All right? The last problem, 26 1/3 divided by 8 3/4. They came up with an estimate of 3. The actual answer would be 3 and 1 100/100/100/5. Okay, one way of estimating it to get that 3 would be to look for compatible numbers. And in this case, you'd say, well, 26 and 8, these are both pretty far apart. This is going to be rounded down to 26. This is going to be rounded up to 9. There's a couple ways you could play with this. But in this case, the best option is to take that and to look for compatible numbers. You can easily justify rounding this down to 24 because of the fraction. And if you're going to round this down, and you're rounding it down quite a bit, then you'd probably want to continue and round this down to 8. You wouldn't want to take it any lower, but 8's justifiable. 24 divided by 8 is 3. Another way that some people may have estimated it, which wouldn't give you a good estimate, would be to say, well, you know what, I'm going to take this and keep it 8, and I'm going to round that to 32. That certainly turns these into compatible numbers, but the estimate is pretty large compared to what the actual answer would have been. All right? So hopefully you understand estimation a little bit better now, and you can get started on any practice work your teacher has for you.